Workin' It Out, a podcast show about diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplaces, our communities, and our lives. A show where we put diversity and inclusion to work.
Got problems on the job, we're working it out. Workplace got you stressing, we're working it out. Yeah, we're working it out, working it out, working it out.
Hi, I'm Dr. Weaver, Vanessa Weaver, your host of Working It Out. It's the show where we put diversity and inclusion to work. On today's show, we're exploring how women master the power game. And we're going to spotlight how mastering the power game is so critical for women, in particular women and Black women and multicultural women. And mastering the power game in the workplace, in the cultural places that we show up, in academic places that we show up, and in our personal lives is so critical. And so today, I'm excited that we're going to engage in a very up-close and personal conversation with Tracey Edmonds. And Tracey is the CEO of Edmonds Entertainment Group. Now, you remember Tracey Edmonds from that wonderful Soul Food. Now, she's done more than Soul Food, right? But all of us love that show. And then the TV show, this is the brainchild and the businesswoman behind that. And so we're going to talk to Tracey about, how she mastered the power game, particularly as a multicultural woman in Hollywood. So as you all know, I usually do my research and I said, I'm going to do a refresh on this show in preparation for my conversation with Tracey. So I went to ChatGPT because I'm kind of getting experience with that. And what I found, I just wanted to read you the paragraphs. I mean, they have 3 pages on Tracey. So let me just say that. 3 pages on ChatGPT on Tracey. And I said, well, my goodness. And so, but the first and the opening and the closing paragraph was just phenomenal. I had a whole paragraph I was going to share with you about Tracey, but this was so great what they had on ChatGPT. I want to read it to you. So they said, yes, Tracey is a prime example of a Black woman who successfully overcame barriers in the entertainment industry. And I'm holding this paper. So she has navigated racial and gender bias to establish herself as a powerful producer, media mogul, and entrepreneur, making significant strides both in front of and behind the scenes. Tracey Edmonds, this is the closing paragraph. Tracey Edmonds embodies how Black women can master power in entertainment by creating their own paths, leveraging business acumen, and pushing past barriers. She didn't wait for Hollywood's approval. She built her own empire and proved that Black women can be dominant forces in both entertainment and business.
Wow.
Does that person sound familiar to you, Tracey?
God bless ChatGPT. I had no idea. Wow. That brain of ChatGPT is super, super sweet. And it was just warming my heart to hear all that. I was like, oh, but I'm excited to be here with you, Vanessa.
So Tracey, we're excited to have you here because you do embody what mastering power is all about. And in this particular climate that we're operating in, so many people feel powerless and they feel like they can only be the recipient of what other people choose to do to navigate their lives. So I thought this topic was particularly important for us to have conversation on. So thank you for that. So tell me, Tracey, because I always ask this why question. And why did you choose, with all the things you have to do? And I know, I'm a big cheese and everything, but why did you choose to engage with our audience on this topic of women mastering power?
So Vanessa, I'm excited that I get to chat with you about power because power to me is control. And power is control over your own life, over your destiny. And it involves being more proactive with your life instead of reactive. And I think it's so important for women to take control over their lives and stuff. And women can do that with making their own decisions, having financial independence, and having autonomy over your own life. You see, I've felt the need to be empowered ever since I was a young girl, like probably starting around the age of 13, because many people don't know this. Many people think that I grew up in a upscale household where I had a lot of money, but I didn't. And so I grew up in a single parent household where my mom was constantly struggling to make ends meet. I grew up seeing eviction notices. I grew up getting our phone cut off. I grew up getting our electricity cut off, and seeing my mom not having the power to be able to help us, was sad for all of us. And so, when I saw everything going on, I said to myself that when I grow up, I never want to be in that position. I always want to be in a place where I control my own finances. I control my life. I control my destiny. And so that's why I think it is so important for us to seize power over our own lives so that we never have to wait for somebody to solve our problems. We know that we have the inherent power that's been given to us by God to make our own decisions and correct problems and control our outcomes and live our best life.
Well, that's an interesting, because I was going to ask you, what is your definition of power, to make sure that we were all operating on the same understanding. So from your perspective, everyone has power. It's not just inherited power, because I was going to ask you about that, but everybody, you feel that God has embedded in each and every one of us the power to
Yeah.
influence and shape our destinies.
So again, Vanessa, we're talking about power equaling control over your life. And so we all have the ability to be proactive and move our lives forward. And so we're not stuck. And so all of us deal with challenges and obstacles, but it's about how we handle those challenges and those obstacles. Do we sit around and play victim, or believe that we're a victim and that we can't correct a situation? No, we have to rise up and get up and put our pants back on and take charge of whatever it is that we're presented with. God gave us the ability to solve problems. And we can, and we have to have faith, and we have to believe in ourselves. And so again, the theme is taking control. So if you have a setback, it's okay. You can get up and you can take control again, and you can move your life forward. And that's, I think, really the theme of what I want to say today.
Well, Tracey, thank you so much for sharing that, because one of the aspects of this show that I'm excited about is that we have an opportunity to have these up close and personal conversations with people like yourself who've exercised their power, but and learned about how to exercise their power along the way. And so I was just curious, when and how did you master, or how did you develop this definition of power?
I felt like growing up, I was very independent. I grew up in a single parent household. My parents split up when I was in elementary school. And my mom really put me to work at a young age. I was 13 years old when I got my first job, because I had to contribute to the household income as much as I could. So I was probably pretty mature for your average 13-year-old. So my mom thought I could handle my first job. I was a receptionist at a mortgage company at 13 years old during
At
my
13.
during my summer vacation. So I was like taking phone calls and, transferring calls and keeping people's schedules and all that kind of stuff at age 13. It really instilled a work ethic in me, responsibility in me, and, independence and a desire to succeed. And so, when you go through setbacks when you're young and you see, your family struggling or anyone struggling, it makes you desire a better life, for yourself, for your family. When I grew up and became an adult, first person I helped was my mom. because I never wanted her to worry about finances again.
Mhm.
So all that to say, and I forgot what the question was, Vanessa, but that gave me my motivation and my drive to succeed. And so having that basis, as a foundation, I worked extra hard for everything. I wanted to be the best student in the class. I wanted to be valedictorian. I wanted to ace all of my exams. Like I just really, really had a drive to succeed and to win because I wanted to be financially successful when I grew up so that I could help my family and so we could all have a better life. And so consequently, I worked really hard, graduated from high school when I was 16. I got an academic scholarship to Stanford University and graduated when I was 20 and then started off in the work field. And so I was pre-med in college and I thought I was going to be a doctor. And so after I graduated, I thought I was going to take like a gap year and, before I went on to medical school, but I decided to just keep working. And so during my first gap year, I got my real estate broker's license and I started selling real estate. And I ended up getting this entrepreneurial bug where I grew from selling real estate into creating a real estate company and having employees and doing the home loans for that homes that we sold. I was doing real estate and we were making money, but I felt like that wasn't my true calling. And so I felt like there was something else waiting for me. I really, really did. And so about the end of year 3, I decided to move to LA. And I had been going to LA on the weekends and meeting people in LA. And I felt like LA was more of my vibe than the Newport Beach. So moved up to LA. Wouldn't you know, the weekend that I moved up to LA, I met my future husband. At the time I met Kenneth Babyface Edmonds the weekend that I moved up to LA. And, life my whole trajectory just changed. Yeah. And, here I was thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to be a real estate entrepreneur. And, and then God was like, nope, nope. Let me introduce you to Kenneth Babyface Edmonds so that you can have an entree into the entertainment business because that's your plan. And so that's exactly what happened. And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before we go into that part of your life, which I'm definitely interested in you talking about, what were the lessons about power that you acquired? Because I'm just thinking, as a 13-year-old, you're a receptionist. I feel like one of the most impactful positions in a company is the receptionist. That's the first face that the customer or the client sees. They have a sense of the tempo, what the issues that are being talked about in the reception area. So at 13, you must have learned a lot about how adults think and process information, how they interact with each other at 13.
Well, you know what? It's funny that you said that because at 13, when I'm going through that, I don't realize that, all of that is happening. But the crazy thing for me, if I'm going back and looking back at my memories and stuff, I was 13 and I was basically a kid, but to your point, I'm like this 13-year-old and, being asked to call and schedule appointments and rearrange schedules. And they actually started me maybe about 6 months into the job to learning how to, believe it or not, Vanessa, process loans at this mortgage company. So they were like, they kept training me on all this adult stuff. And I was like this kid, and so it did give me, I guess, some sense of power because I was this young kid with all this responsibility to all of these adults that were counting on me. And so, I don't think I realized I had any power at the time, but I guess I did.
Yeah. Okay. So fast forward. So you graduate at 16, you go to one of the most prestigious universities in the world, not just in the United States, but Stanford in the world. And you graduate there at what, 20?
Yeah, 20.
So you're still younger than most people. They don't get out before they're 21 or 22 or sometimes later than that. And you start a real estate company. So what were the power lessons? And I ask you that because, not only are you very smart, but you're very attractive and you have such a pleasant disposition and demeanor about yourself. So how did you navigate the feminine side of that, being a female in a relatively male dominated real estate market like Newport Beach?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I learned is to embrace your uniqueness. And that's,
Okay.
again, that's going to be a theme that we're going to continue talking about. And so that was another scenario where I learned to embrace my uniqueness. So, Vanessa, if you know anything about Newport Beach, it's a
Hmm.
predominantly conservative
Right.
white area.
Yes.
Absolutely gorgeous waterfront, beautiful homes,
Uh,
beautiful shopping, beautiful restaurants. And so enter this Black girl into the real estate community. And they hadn't seen anyone that looked like me in the real estate community out there, because there was very few people of color out there.
I
And
was going to say, Tracy, because I in my career with Procter and Gamble, I worked out there near Newport Beach, and you didn't see a whole lot of us out there.
no, and
And so
so
I'm sitting up here thinking she's selling real estate, and
yeah.
and and in the 80s and the 90s, homes out of Newport Beach were already 3 to 5 to $7 million, if not more.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a very, very lucrative market at the time. And
Yes.
again, Vanessa, embracing your uniqueness. I'm like, okay, hey, I'm young. I'm Black. I know what I'm doing. I know how to connect with people. I know how to market. I know how to brand. So I'm unique. I'm
Yeah.
unique in this area. And so,
Yes.
nobody, looks like me because I'm a
Mhm.
person of color and a young female and all this. And I'm going to embrace it and not be scared of it. I'm not going to be scared to be the fish out of water. I'm going to embrace being the fish out of water because when I walk into a room, nobody looks like me.
That's
There are
right.
no other people of color or anything there. So I'm going to take my confidence and my energy and walk into a room with confidence and with swag, and sell something, or sign you on as a client. And
Mhm.
and that worked for me. Again, we're talking about this theme of power is the ability to embrace your authenticity.
Yes, it is.
And,
Mhm.
and I just was my authentic self, even starting in the real estate, community and stuff. And I've always been a people person. That's one thing
Mhm.
I can say. Like, I won't say which sorority I was in college, but being in a sorority in college also too, people don't realize it, but it gives you your early networking skills and your
Mhm.
your communication skills and stuff. And so when you're going
Yes.
through pledging and all that kind of stuff, and it really kind of teaches you how to be engaging with
Exactly.
people conversationally and stuff
And
early
how to
on.
work in teams.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
exactly.
In
E- e-
groups. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So all those little things in my foundation, kind of gave me the confidence to be able to enter any room, and I was always prepared too, though. But and do what you need to do, and influence the outcome, with your knowledge, with your expertise, and again, by being you.
Well, so you go to LA. You decide I'm going to move to LA because that's more my vibe. Newport Beach is all of that, but it's not LA.
Yep.
And you meet your future husband with the
Yes.
confidence, with the swag you have, with the experience, with the intellect. Oh my goodness, he must have been smitten off his feet. He had to be.
We definitely hit it off pretty quickly. He was Kenny, and he knows this. We're still great friends.
Mhm.
Kenny was extremely shy, at
Mhm.
that, during that chapter of his life. And so, I met Kenny right as he was rising as an artist, with the Whip-a-Pills songs
Oh
and the
yeah,
Tender Lover album.
yeah.
And so he was he was rising as I met him, and the fame was like hitting him really, really hard. And he wasn't quite ready for all of that because he was just just a shy guy at heart from Indianapolis. And so when we met, definitely we had very different personalities, but we connected through conversation, and we found out that we actually liked a lot of the same things, especially music. And so when I met him, it was a whirlwind, romance. We met and, started dating, moved in together, got married. And I was married by the time I was 24. I think I was 24 years old. And so yes, when we met, I took a complete career trajectory. I had moved up to LA to rebrand my real estate brand, and I was going to become the expert real estate agent to the stars. And so I was going to I was going to be the celebrity, real estate, agent. And so we moved our office up there, and I continued selling real estate for a while and sold real estate to a few celebrities. And, but once, Kenny and I got together, I started, learning more and more about the music business, and learned all about music publishing and record labels and all of that. And so that's what kind of took me into starting my own publishing company, which became a record label, which became me music supervising films and doing soundtracks through that record label, to me producing films and producing TV shows, which brings us through today, actually. And so I know that was long-winded, but that's my history.
Well, it's really it's fascinating. And again, when I was so intrigued by what ChatGPT was saying about you. And not only did they share those paragraphs, but I want to share with you. I mean, they went into detail, and I'm going to send this to you because I want you to see it. But they went into detail, and they said that this is how Tracey Edmonds overcame barriers in Hollywood. Number one, she broke into Hollywood as a Black female producer, and she challenged stereotypes, and she controlled her narrative. 3, you were able to transition into the business and executive leadership. And 4, you navigated industry bias and overcame challenges. And so, and then the last, they said, you expanded your brand and your influence.
Wow.
And so again, they put it in all caps that you're a trailblazer for Black and all women in entertainment.
I'm so grateful for those words. And so
I'm telling you.
I mean, I had no idea that ChatGPT had all that in there, but it's really beautiful and humbling, and I really appreciate it. But
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a thing that I should mention is that I always had a really curious brain, and so I was always kind of seeing things in my head and wanting to know more, wanting to see if I could do this or wanting to see if I could do that. I mean, if you look at some of the books that I would read when I was a kid, I was just super nerdy and always just curious. Oh, what about this? What about that? So that carried me through my entire life. And so, when I say that, I met Kenny when I was 22. I met Kenny when I was 22. And I became curious about the music industry. Right. And so I wanted to know, wow, you're a songwriter. How does publishing work? So I'd go and get all these books, everything you need to know about the music business, and read it from cover to cover, and, read.
You prepared yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. Prepared. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the connection you had, but you had the preparation.
Yes, exactly. So for me, gaining knowledge in the area that I want to go into, or in the field that I want it to go into, is very, very important, because that gives you confidence. And so when you feel like you don't know what you're doing, you can tell. You can tell when somebody's kind of scrambling or unprepared, or whatever. And so for me, even when I entered a new field, going from real estate into entertainment, I wanted to be prepared. And so I didn't want to be that girl that came in the room and everyone was like, oh, the only reason she's here is because of her husband. But I want to encourage everyone to keep your eye on the prize and to really stay focused. And if you have to get rid of anything, get rid of the nonsense, block the noise so that you can stay focused on what you need to do, what you need to accomplish, and so you can live in your purpose.
Wow. Well, Tracey Edmonds, I thank you so much. I mean, this is a master class that we just had from you and on mastering women, mastering power. But frankly, it's the lessons that anybody can employ, but particularly women, because although we want power, sometimes we feel very uncomfortable acting on it and exercising it. And you've just given us such a very natural, easy kind of explanation and showcase of how that can be done. So I just want to again thank you on behalf of my Working It Out team and also all of the listeners in the audience that's really just benefiting from this conversation. Thank you again for being part of our show.
Oh,
And
thank
so
you
I'm going to
so
close
much.
out. I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver, your host of Working It Out, and I wish each of you what I call a be happy week. Goodbye.
Got problems on the job, we're working it out. Workplace got you stressing, we're working it out. Yeah, we're working it out, working it out, working it out.